بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. And welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat online classes. And today is the subject matter of the contract, or known as Mawdu' al-Aqd. And we'll be covering in today's session the nature of the subject matter, which is the price and goods and the conditions related to each one of them. But before that, let me just recap that contract is divided into three major pillars. The first one is the contracting party, buyer and seller. And the second pillar, which is today's session, is the price and goods. And the third pillar is basically the siha, or the offer and acceptance. From these three types of pillars, the most important one is basically the subject matter. Because if I put the illustration in a very simple way, if you do a contract, so typically we have a buyer and seller. And if we take the example of buyer or sales, typically we have a buyer and sellers, which are the conditions could be fulfilled somehow easily. And also the communication between the buyer and seller could be also expressed quite smoothly and easily, often acceptance. But what is important and the crucial part is basically the subject matter, what you are buying, what kind of asset that you are buying, what's the status of what you are buying, with what you are buying, and so on and so forth. These are normally that potentially may create some kind of Sharia non-compliance issue. And the practice of Islamic banking operation within the Islamic financial institutions, the subject matter represents the component that normally regarded as a crucial component, and the most of the Sharia non-compliance contract or non-Sharia compliance issue are related to the subject matter. Some of the issue that could be related to the first pillar and the third pillar could be somehow fixed smoothly, but some of the issues in the subject matter, if it's happened and if it just goes wrong, so maybe it's a bit difficult to fix and rectify the transaction. Just to highlight how important is the subject matter in the theory of contract. Let me just go through the discussions, and we start by saying in a typical contract we have the subject matter, which is a price and the goods. But you have to keep in mind the normal transactions, price is in the form of cash, money, and the goods in the form of asset. And this is, we call it normal sales or normal transaction. But it may happen that the price is goods as well, assets, or food, or commodity. And the goods is assets or commodity. Then you have a status of what's called muqayada, meaning that commodity versus commodity. So the first one is a price in the form of cash versus commodity. That's the normal sales. The second scenario is you have a price in a form of commodity and the goods in a form of commodity. Then we have commodity versus commodity. Then we are in the status of a muqayada. And the other one is that the price in a form of cash and the goods in a form of cash as well. So we have a cash versus cash. Then the transaction will be in a form of sarf or forex. And the scenario, or the following cases, is that you have a cash in one hand, and the other hand is a form of manfa or benefit. Then you are in a status of lease or ijara. As you can see, if the price and the goods changes its status from cash to commodity to benefit the entire transaction, so the entire contract will shift to a different status, being a normal sales or muqayada or forex or leasing, and so on and so forth. And this is a very important that looking at the price, the nature of the price, the nature of the commodity will determine the status of the contract that we are dealing with. The other point I would like to highlight is that in a Sharia transaction, it's not necessary that the asset or the subject matter is an asset, or even the price, it's an asset, but it could be utility, it could be what's called a patent, it could be a non-tangible asset. So it's not necessary that it should be tangible. Even the price, it could be manfa, meaning that my price is to stay, for example, for 2 weeks in my apartment in Penang, for example, one of the cities of Malaysia. And this is a price to get something. So this price is valid. So what I'm trying to say is that the price could be a benefit. And the commodity could be benefit or otherwise. It could be tangible or otherwise. So all this shows how flexible is Sharia, how dynamic is Sharia, how Sharia can accommodate evolutions of the market in business and finance. So let me go through now the subject matter, and let me highlight first the very important requirements before we zoom into discussion in each one. In overall, we may say that the subject matter or the mawdu' al-aqd, which is normally in a kind of transaction of sales, it is a price and goods, have around 5 requirements. The first one is the legality of the subject matter, meaning be legal. The second one is the specification or the disclosure of the informations that the subject matter should be known to both parties. The third one is the capability of the contracting party to hand over the subject matter. And the following one, that the subject matter should be in existence, meaning it does exist. And the last one, the subject matter should not be under some obligations or some rights which restricts its delivery. So this is the general what's so-called requirements that could be regarded as a valid conditions to have a valid subject matter. Let me just try to pick up one or two requirements, then the balance we try to discuss it in the following session to keep the discussion short and focused. So the first one is the legality as mentioned, meaning that the subject matter should be legal. In the price, legal and recognized currency, and the subject matter also legal assets, meaning a permissible asset, meaning a Sharia compliance asset, meaning something that it is allowed by Sharia to buy and sell. If it is forbidden or prohibited item, like for example liquors or pork, so basically we are in a status of non-Sharia compliance transaction. That's why if you look, for example, in the commodity platform of the commodity Murabaha platform, if you look at the assets that is subject to the trade for the financial Islamic institution to transact our, you see that all the list of assets has been approved by the Sharia Advisory Council of Security Commissions or the Sharia Advisor of the Bursa Souq al-Sila to ensure that those assets are Sharia compliance, valid to be transacted. So the first one is that what you are buying, what you are saying is permissible asset, is a Sharia compliance asset to avoid the prohibitions items in buying and selling. The second requirement, what you are buying, what you are selling should be a property value in the eye of Sharia and the Urf, meaning that it's something that is recognized by Urf, by custom, by the market, that has a value subject to a pricing, subject to a transactions. But if it has been dismissed by the market that this is not a value, property of value in the market that couldn't be subject of sales and buy, so it will be dismissed by the Sharia accordingly. So here we have, you may say, two requirements. One is a very strict Sharia requirements on the permissibility. The other one is a custom requirements on the asset, but it is of course respectively endorsed by Sharia. If you have fulfilled these requirements, we assume that the first elements or the first condition has been fulfilled, which is the suitability of the Sharia, the suitability of the subject matter to be valid in the contract. Now, the second point we would like to highlight is basically that this subject matter, price and good, should be known to the contracting party, meaning how much you are buying, with what you are buying is local currency, foreign currency, it is a spot transaction, it is a deferred transaction, is it salam, is it through installments, it is through check, is it through debit card, is it through credit card, is it through a letter of credit, what kind of payments and the mode of the payments and the currency. So this has to be disclosed. And also the subject matter, the goods, what you are buying. Is it a car? Is it a house? So you have to determine and disclose the specifications and the specifications of the asset that determine the quality and the quantity of what you are buying or what you are selling. In this one, normally it is done through a few things. One of them is viewing the asset, meaning that let's say you want to buy a car, so you go to the showroom, you see the car. Maybe this is not the car that you are buying, but it is similar car to it. This is not the mobile that you are buying, but it is similar to it. So showcase some item will contribute to the disclosure and fulfilling the satisfactions of the specifications from Sharia standpoint. Now, in case you cannot see the asset, it could be disclosed through specifications. Sometimes it's a catalog. Let's say, for example, you have a laptop, so you see the picture of the laptop and specification, or the mobile, the picture and the specification, and so on and so forth. Like, for example, if you go on Lazada platform, for example, you click on one item, you see the color, you see the dimension, you see the specification. So the sufficient information that contribute to the disclosure of this item. So this one will contribute as well to the fulfillment of the specification, and the objective basically is to remove the elements of gharar, meaning no uncertainty, no jahala, no gharar, because in Sharia transactions, gharar is not acceptable, especially in the exchange contract like sales, lease. Gharar is not acceptable, and the objective to have this kind of disclosure and the specifications to determine the quality and the quantity of the subject matter is to remove the gharar and lower the degree of gharar as much as you can, in order to create what's so-called a sound information to make sound decision and provide your offer and acceptance on the paying the price and getting the ownership of the asset. Of course, these requirements of specifications is applicable to the exchange contract, but it is not applicable to tabarruat contract. Of course, when we go in the coming session and we'll talk about the classification of contract, then we talk about the exchange contract and tabarruat contract, we do a kind of comparison, then we will see that the specifications, the knowledge, the gharar is applicable only to exchange contract, but it is not applicable to tabarruat contract, where tabarruat contract accept and accommodate a degree of gharar and uncertainty. So this is basically the overall descriptions of the subject matter, and this is the discussion of two items, which is the legality of the subject matter, and number two, the specification or the disclosure of the subject matter. The balance of the conditions, we will try to discuss it inshallah in the coming session. With that, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.